Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on which clock you're looking at. This is Kate Alder from Irvine Valley College. We'll be getting started with today's webinar series, and I just noticed that I have the wrong title at the top of this slide, so my apologies for that. We're doing fun new tips and tools today, and so we'll be getting started in just a few moments. So if you have any questions, send them to me in the chat, and I'll be right back. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar for this week. My name is Kate Alder, and I'm with Irvine Valley College, and we're the fiscal agent for the grant that's funding this project. So I'm going to help you with some technical stuff for today. So everyone's microphones have been muted by the system, but just to double check, you can, if you want to look at your microphone on your screen or do *6 on your telephone keypad to unmute yourself. The big point that I would like to make today is that when you have questions, what I'm going to ask you to do is to use the questions area or the chat box that you should see on the right side of your screen. I'll be monitoring those questions and also the chat area. So if you have a technical question, I will respond to it immediately directly to you. If you have a question for Kate Brooks, I will be monitoring those throughout the webinar and then asking Kate what those for the answers to those questions at the end. So again, my name is Kate Alder. Please make sure that you use your question area or chat box if you have any questions for Kate Brooks. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now and ask Rita Jones to join us. She's got a few things that she'd like to talk about. So Rita, are you there?
I'm here, thank you. Welcome everyone today. As you can see, our topic, if I can bring what's not staying up on my screen, oh dear, sorry. Our topic today is Make Your Own Job, Coaching Students Toward Entrepreneurship. So welcome to that. I know many of you have probably been on the calls before, so you're aware of the fact that our funding comes from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. We're very grateful for that. And at the end today, I'll be showing you some of these resources and actually where you can find the recorded version of these webinars, because this is the third in a series of 4. Next week we'll be talking about working with creative students and supporting their dreams and testing reality. But I'd like to turn it over to Kate Brooks. I know by now most of you know her. She is very qualified to be running this series for us. She's the Career Center Director, pardon me, at the University of Texas in Austin. She's the author of You Majored in What? Mapping Your Path from Chaos to Career. And is just an extremely creative and entrepreneurial woman herself. So we'd like to turn it over to you now, Kate. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to do this for us.
Thank you, Rita, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kate Brooks now. And Kate, you should be able to take it and then be able to show your screen. And I apologize, folks, I'm having a problem with unmuting Kate's phone, her microphone. So, Kate, I don't know if you can hear me. We could hear you before. Can you please try doing *6 on your telephone and see if you can unmute yourself? Kate, I'm getting a message that says you need to enter an audio pin of #47#. Rita, can you speak?
I can hear you, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can't hear Kate yet. Susan Coleman, can I hear you? Would you speak, please?
Yes, yes, and now I can hear you over the computer, but I'm not hearing Kate at all.
Yes, it looks like, Kate, I'm not quite sure what's happened to your connection. It says that they're sending you an audio pin. You might need to check your email. So, folks, I do apologize for this technical difficulty, and I hope that you will stick with us for a moment or two while we get this straightened out.
Kate, you might tell her to make sure she clicks either telephone or mic and speakers.
Kate Brooks, I hope that you heard Susan's suggestion. We had Kate Brooks on the line earlier when we were in the practice session, and her audio was working fine. So something has happened and got disconnected. So.
Hello?
There you are,
hello?
Kate. You're there.
Yeah, we're so happy to hear your voice, Kate.
Yeah, something threw me out of the system, and so I had to completely redial in. So I don't know what happened, but something went wrong.
Okay, so I've just changed the presenter back to you, Kate, so you should be able to be showing your screen now. There we go.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes,
Are
sweet
we all set
success.
to go?
I think we can hear you
Yay.
and we can see you. Thank you so much, Kate.
Okay. All right. Sorry for that confusion. Apparently threw me out of the phone system for some reason. No one wants to hear this presentation. So this is Kate Brooks, and I might have changed the title a little myself. I call it Preparing Students for Entrepreneurial Careers. Certainly that's a topic that many of us have been hearing about for a while now, and it's in the news and something that I think interests a lot of our students. I got involved in this topic about 2 years ago when my dean asked a very provocative question. He mentioned that he thought career centers were kind of odd because all we do is work really hard to get our students employed, and in terms of making them the best interviewee or having them write the best resume, and the whole idea is that we simply have them compete with students from other schools where their career centers are doing the same thing, and we're all competing for these finite number of jobs. And he said, what are you all doing to create jobs? And that was sort of a provocative question, something I hadn't really thought about, and went back to my staff, and we started talking about maybe we need to look at ways that we can help students create their own jobs. And so that's how this whole thing developed. And so I thought that it might be helpful for you all to know a little bit about this and maybe even work with your students in this area if you have not done so already. And I guess the first thing I want to say about this is don't be intimidated because maybe you don't run your own business or you haven't had that sort of experience yourself. There is so much information out there and so many ways that you can help students even if you yourself are not an entrepreneur. So let's take a look at some of this. Some interesting facts, and these come from a book called The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley and William Danko. 2/3 of millionaires are self-employed. So that's kind of interesting because you know how we always see those top 10 lists, the most top 10 paying careers and so on, and we're all sort of thinking, great, everybody needs to be an engineer, everybody needs to be a doctor because those are the top paying careers. Well, actually not really. Entrepreneurship pays well for people whose businesses succeed. Now, of course, that's the risk factor. But in any case, 2/3 of millionaires are self-employed, and self-employed people are 4 times more likely to be millionaires than those who work for others. So when you have a creative student or you have students who don't want to be an engineer or a doctor but would like to earn a good income, this may be a field to have them take a look at. Also, this was interesting to me. Most millionaires have lived in the same location for their adult lives. It's because they own factories or chains of stores or a farm, a major farm, or a service business of some sort. So they, despite that image of the jet-setting millionaire, many of them actually are rooted in certain locations. Now, I won't be surprised if that figure starts to change as more and more people become e-commerce folks and they don't necessarily have a physical location, but from a classic sense of an entrepreneur, they do live in the same location. Also, personal characteristics, their personality, is actually more important than the type of business they're running to predict their level of wealth. So their income has a lot to do with their personality, more so than just the type of business that they're running. And most millionaires encourage their children to be self-employed professionals or some sort of business owner. And I guess that's not a big surprise because they see the value in that. But I just thought those were kind of interesting facts that I was not aware of until I looked at that book. So let me give you a couple statistics too. Babson College, by the way, kind of leads the way in entrepreneurial studies. I believe virtually every student has to complete essentially a combination liberal arts / business degree, and entrepreneurship is very much promoted by the college. And they have a center called the Global, or they have a center that handles entrepreneurship, and they publish a document, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. And in that, they posted some interesting statistics about entrepreneurship around the world. By the way, that's a hard word to say, and so I'm probably going to stumble over it many times in this program. Anyway, nearly 400 million entrepreneurs are starting or running businesses in 54 economies throughout the world. So that's a lot of entrepreneurial startups. 163 million of these early-stage entrepreneurs are women, and 165 million of these early-stage entrepreneurs are ages 18 to 25. So that's almost half, which I think is very interesting. And 69 million of these early-stage entrepreneurs are offering innovative products and services, meaning they're providing things that have not been previously provided. So that's kind of interesting as well. In terms of personality traits, since we did mention earlier that personality kind of trumps the type of business in terms of what kinds of businesses are successful. These are traits that have been identified by several sources as important for entrepreneurs. Not surprisingly, persistence is needed, and any kind of entrepreneurial activity requires that kind of attitude of never say die, always trying and trying again. Certainly confidence is needed, and vision combined with action, the ability to see what needs to get done and then do it, not just talk about it. Obviously, these folks can't be 9-to-5ers. That just doesn't work in the entrepreneurial world. Some of the jokes I hear from entrepreneurs are, I gave up my 40-hour-a-week job to do an 80-hour-a-week job working for myself. And that's true. It isn't necessarily the ticket to a shorter work week, certainly not in the beginning. Requires dedication, certainly requires risk-taking, and that's an important element. Can the individual withstand the risk that comes with being an entrepreneur? I have a friend who left a very good-paying job here at UT to start her own business, and she reached a point after several different startups where she literally had just enough money in the bank for one more mortgage payment. I could not have done that personally, but that was her choice, and now her business has turned around. She makes a six-figure plus income. She's doing very, very well, but again, she had to be willing to run that risk. Of course, dedication's important. I mentioned that. And integrity, personal responsibility. Sometimes your word is all you have, and sometimes you're running a one-person show. So if you say you're going to do something, you need to do it, or you may not get repeat customers. Adaptability, courage, that comes along, I guess, with the risk-taking. Communication skills. You know, sometimes you're doing everything yourself, so the ability to write, the ability to speak and communicate, explain your ideas can be very important. A sense of urgency, knowing that things need to get done, and they need to get done on a schedule. You cannot constantly say, oh, I'll take care of that tomorrow. You really have to have the kind of personality that gets things done. Certainly a desire. You know, you really want to have the passion and the desire to get into this business. And a certain amount of independence, the ability to work on your own. Or, you know, if you create a team, certainly the ability to work with that team. And then finally, and again, these are in no particular order, but the ability to set and achieve goals. So these are things to, you know, go over with your students. The way I've kind of set this program up today is I almost have it set up that you can turn these ideas into a workshop. So if you'd like to run a workshop for your students on is entrepreneurship for you, a lot of the information you're getting today will enable you to do that. And certainly if not a workshop, you can keep these notes and slides and things and be able to talk with students one-on-one. So really the point of the whole rest of this program is how can you help? You know, if we know that entrepreneurship is a great way for students to make money, it's a great career path if they have the right personality, how can we help them get going on this, particularly since it's normally not in most of our bailiwick? Okay, well, the first thing is, like all good career coaches, you're going to ask the right questions. And anybody who's attended my seminars that I ran out there in California knows that I'm big on asking the right questions. So we can start with kind of a simple assessment. And these are some very basic, what I would call screening questions. These are the first things to ask if a student says they're interested in running their own business or you've asked them about it. First of all, what is their dream? You know, what do they see themselves doing as an entrepreneur? And they might have different definitions of entrepreneur than what you think. And then also assessing their knowledge of what it means to run a business. Do they really know what that means? And that's a good thing to find out. You know, maybe some of them come from families where they run their own businesses, or maybe they don't, and so they really don't have that kind of perspective. They just think it would be cool. What steps have they already taken? That's just a good quick check-in to see if they've even started. You know, have they read a book? Have they thought about it? Have they talked to somebody who's an entrepreneur? And then this one's an important one. What are their financial resources? What do they have access to, or what could they acquire possibly? Because that's going to be a factor. It won't be the be-all and end-all, because there are ways to get money, but they certainly need to be thinking about that from the very beginning. And so another thing that you can do is help them start to assess their potential for running a business. And I'm going to give you a few more questions here. This goes a little deeper now. So this would be more, you know, how do I start to identify what is their potential? One is, how does their education influence their ability? So asking them, you know, obviously, what's their course of study, and what courses do they plan to take? Are they going to take some courses that will help them run a business? And what experience do they have? I've been teaching a course called the Liberal Arts Entrepreneur for 3 semesters now, and a lot of my students at the end of the class say, well, this is a great business idea, but I think I need to go work in the field for a while. For instance, one of my students was developing a business that's basically, it's kind of a combination of a bar and a gaming center, and I forget what her term for it was, but it's a place where people can go and have a drink and they can play games on various video screens and things. And her assessment at the very end was, you know, there are a couple of those places here in Austin, and I think I need to go work for one. Maybe I could be an assistant manager for a year. So she could really learn from the ground up what the business involves. And if that's the outcome of their workshop with you, that they say, you know, I don't really know enough yet, I need to go work for a year, that's a great outcome. They have just saved themselves probably a lot of lost money. And so then what knowledge do they have that would help them with this business? Do they have a particular body of knowledge that's important to the business? For instance, some of you all might want to open your own career coaching business. That would be something to assess, is what knowledge do I have? And how is that going to influence the clients I might take on in my business? And then we mentioned earlier personality characteristics, but again, asking them if they do have the personality characteristics needed to succeed. And have they taken any career assessments? And does their profile fit an entrepreneurial mindset? So I want to mention some assessments that might be helpful. Some of them you'll already be familiar with, but there's one or two that maybe might be new to you. This one I really like. It's not what I would call a formal assessment, but it's located in a book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It's actually kind of an old book. I think it was originally written in the 1990s, but it's still very good information. It doesn't have a lot of up-to-date stuff about entrepreneurship. In fact, it talks a lot about franchising, which is, you know, different. But I really like this one component of it when they talk about 3 different personalities that are needed to run a business. And by the way, when I use the term business, this can also apply to nonprofit organizations. Some students in their entrepreneurial ambitions want to start a nonprofit organization rather than a business. But in any business, any entrepreneurial startup, and I would encourage you to just think of yourself for a moment. We'll go back to this idea that you might be running a career coaching private practice, and that's your new entrepreneurial business. If you're setting up this business, you have to basically play 3 roles: the role of the manager, the role of the technician, and the role of the entrepreneur. And let me explain that a little bit. And I think I'm going to do them backwards, even though entrepreneur is the 3rd one there on the list. I'm going to start with that. The entrepreneur is the dreamer. That's the side of you that's enthusiastic, and you're saying, what if? You know, what if I created this great career coaching service? You know, it's the person who has the energy. It's the one you kind of live in the future, and it's very innovative, and here are the things I could do, and the creative elements, and all of that. So that's one part of an entrepreneur. The next part is the technician, and another way to put that is the talent. That's the doer. That's the person who actually performs the service or activity. So that in your case, that's the career coaching. The technician side of it is the hours you spend with clients coaching them. It could also be if the business let's say they're developing apps for an iPhone. The technician might be the computer expert who's creating the apps. You know, so it's the talent, and it's the person who's actually going to earn money for the work performed. And then the 3rd role is the manager, and that's more of a pragmatic person. That's the planner. That's the one that remembers to turn in the invoices and get paid. They're the ones who handle details. They're the ones that kind of organize the business and might take part with some of the marketing as well, in addition to the entrepreneur. And as you can see, those are 3 very different roles and 3 very different personalities, and that's one of the challenges for a person as a sole proprietor. You know, when you think about people who are in businesses like, let's say, a psychologist in a private practice or a dentist or anybody that has their own office, usually the first thing you have to do is hire somebody to handle the parts where you are not as strong. But of course that requires money. So if you don't have that, you're going to have to take all 3 roles. So this is an interesting, there's no real quiz connected to this other than the E-Myth book. And by the way, you can Google this online, you know, the manager, technician, entrepreneur, or E-Myth, and you will find all sorts of information about this. You don't necessarily need to get the book. Just Google it. And you can learn a little more about these 3 business personalities. And that's a great thing to talk to your students about and ask them to rate themselves. Do you see yourself mostly as a manager, or what percentage of time would you enjoy spending in each of these roles? And that's going to give them a real clear idea of what they perhaps might want to think about sending out to somebody else. You know, for me, for instance, the manager's my weakest side. I am more of a technician. I like providing the services, and the entrepreneur side a little bit. I like the ideas and thinking up new things to do. But the manager, the one who sends out the invoices and keeps track, oh, that's probably not my strength. So again, it just varies depending on the person. Now, another thing to look at is something you all are very familiar with, I'm sure, and that's the Holland Code. The RIASEC model, I think, works really well in entrepreneurial classes. My students have really enjoyed that. I can tell you that, by and large, the students who are true entrepreneurs come up, not surprisingly, very high in enterprising. That tends to be their most common characteristic. The second most common that I see is social. And now that may be because I work with liberal arts students. So those of you who work with STEM students, you may find investigative or realistic comes up next, but certainly the enterprising factor needs to be in there, I think. And if it's not, then that's a case where they're probably going to have to look for somebody to be that outgoing sales role, you know, somebody to connect with people. But in any case, the social, again, I think is also helpful because obviously as an entrepreneur they need to connect with people, they need to interact and so on. So I think that giving students that RIASEC code, and again, that doesn't have to cost anything. You can go online. I have down there I have ONET from the Department of Labor. They offer a test for free, and students can get their codes. And again, if you go online, there are a variety of community colleges that have links to various variations of the Holland Code RIASEC test. So you can find that online at no cost and get your students to take that. That's an exercise I have found really helpful with my students. They seem to like it a lot. Another test that some of you may be familiar with is the Strengths Quest. And the Strengths Quest, there is a charge for that. You can, again, just go on to Google and locate the Strengths Quest website. The fee varies depending on how many you purchase, and I think I've seen it as low as $15 and as high as I think around $30. So certainly if you want to administer that, you can contact the company and see if they will give you maybe a discount, or perhaps your college or even the whole board might arrange to have a less of a charge for all schools using it. But the salespeople are usually pretty willing to deal on that. And that's, again, another test my students really like, and they enjoy finding out what their top 5 strengths are, and then we always have a conversation about how do they fit into your entrepreneurial venture. How will, you know, your particular type, you know, for instance, one of the types that you can be is woo. And not surprisingly, people who score high in woo are good at coming into a social gathering and being very vivacious and promoting stuff. And so somebody with woo is going to be great on that entrepreneurial part of the business personality. Maybe they won't be the best manager, but they're going to be great at getting clients. So Strengths Quest is one other thing that you might want to consider if you can for a workshop. And then one of the things that we focus on, or that I focus on in the course that I teach, is creating a business plan. Because a lot of my students have ideas, and they have these pie in the sky, you know, and it's everything from I have this great recipe for marshmallows, and I want to start a business, to I like to ride bikes, and I want to start a bike store that's going to be a custom bike building store. And that's kind of where they end. That's their idea, and they don't know how to go forward. So what I teach in my class is how to create a business plan. And these are just some of the components of a business plan. You know, they have to learn to describe the business. They need to come up with a mission and a vision. The landscape is sort of what's out there. Who are my competitors? If I want to start a marshmallow company, how many marshmallow manufacturers are they? And who is my key competition, Jet Puff or whatever in the grocery store, or is it that little niche candy store down the road that makes marshmallows? And so business landscape is all about surveying what the potential competition is and what's the environment. What's the economy doing? Is there a market for marshmallows, etc. And then ideal customer, just what it sounds like. Who am I hoping will buy my product? Because that's going to influence how I sell my product, where I sell my product, and so on. Certainly money management. How good are they at knowing accounting? Have they taken an accounting course? Do they know how to work Excel spreadsheets or another money-based program? What do they know about keeping charge of that aspect of their business? Operations and personnel. It's all about how do I make the marshmallows? What are the steps involved? Do I need to have a factory? Do I need to get my kitchen certified? What are the processes of going from the beginning to the end, from purchasing the raw goods to make the marshmallows, to who's going to make them, to the end product? That's all about operations. And I suspect some of you are getting a little overwhelmed right now with all that I'm saying. And that's how the students feel. It's like, oh my, I didn't know I had to think about all this. So, if you do this in a workshop, I would encourage them to, know that it's going to take a little time to develop this product and to develop whatever their plan is. And if there's a course where they can do this step by step, that's a great thing to do. And then another element of the business plan is marketing and branding. What am I going to call my company? What's my logo going to look like? What are my colors? What's the theme? What's the font I'm going to use for my business? And how am I going to market it? Where am I going to sell these wonderful marshmallows? By the way, we did have a student bring in great marshmallows. There's an advantage to teaching that class or working with students. They bring in food. It's very much fun. So creating a business plan is a great thing to do. You also, and this is from a book called So You Want to Be an Entrepreneur by John Gillespie Brown. He's got some really good questions that even continue some more of these questions. So asking the students, what characteristics do you share? So you could, for instance, use that previous slide with the different characteristics and show it to them and ask them to, you could even turn it into a worksheet and have them rank order, which is your most and which, most obvious characteristic and which is the one that least is like you. So you could, turn that into an exercise. What are their reasons for wanting to become an entrepreneur? That's a good one to check out, because if one of the reasons is, well, I don't want to work as hard, that may not be the best reason. How would your family and friends react to this? That's an interesting conversation. What do you think your life would be like on a day-to-day basis? Reality check time. That's a great reality check question. What do you think the downsides are, and how would you cope with them? And again, another reality check. Have they even thought about the fact that there might be problems connected to it? What's their ultimate vision or goal? Where do they see themselves going with this? And what are their core personality traits? What life stage are they at? You all work with students of all different ages, and some of them are career transitioners, and they're coming back after having a career in a whole different field. Some of them are 18. Where are they in life, and how does that influence? Do they have a family to support? Do they have maybe loans or a mortgage or things like that? So this is all the sort of thing that their life stage is going to be a factor. What resources do they have available? Do they have a credit line at the local bank that they could draw on or not? Do they have some ideas for possible funding for whatever their idea is? And I think this final question that John Gillespie Brown asked is very good. What can you see yourself doing for the rest of your life? Now, that's a tough question at age 18, but the point is how quickly do they become bored with the topic? We have students who drop out of our class. It's not a big surprise for me to have 3 or 4 students drop out before the class ends, and I'm told it's because they suddenly realized that the idea wasn't that interesting to them. And so that's why, having a chance for them to work on these plans and things can be really important. It doesn't have to be a class. It can be a series of workshops. So let me go a little bit more into how you can set up a supportive environment for entrepreneurship on your campus. The first thing to do is to gather resources. My bet is your campuses already have things for entrepreneurship. So one of the things to do is to seek out what's already there. Some of you might even have an entrepreneurship center or a business center of some sort. You might already have some offices that are run by IT or other technology resources that students could latch onto. facilities, various faculty who are already teaching these kinds of courses. My experience with entrepreneurship faculty and others is they like to network, and they like to know that they can partner with all sorts of people. So if they haven't already, partnering with your office might be a great thing, because they may think of, well, the Career Center, that's really kind of for traditional job seekers, and since my students aren't seeking jobs, they don't need the Career Center. This might be a place to start a conversation. That's what you really want to do, is become part of the conversation. You want your office to be thought of by these students who maybe aren't normally participating in your office because they're thinking, I don't need the Career Center, I'm on my own. You also can obviously build up, if you have a library, relevant books would be a way to start helping students out. They may not want to purchase all those books. If you have them, that's great. You can, of course, create handouts on how to start your own business or things to consider. Maybe even a whole web page, that you could create related to entrepreneurship and link to various resources that might be helpful. Certainly check in with your Chamber of Commerce or any other local area services. I do live in Austin, and Austin's just a hotbed for this kind of stuff. I'm amazed at the number of entrepreneurial startups and things that are out there. I can tell you that one resource we've used sometimes is SCORE, and some of you may be familiar with that. It's the I forget the exact acronym, but it's an organization of retired executives, and they're there to give advice. We've had mixed response from our students to SCORE, and it's because a lot of them, because by the very title, retired executives, many of them come from traditional corporate settings, and they're not as tuned into the entrepreneurial aspect. But if you have a SCORE program, you certainly could look into it and see. And like I said, Chamber of Commerce can be a great resource because they're often interested in helping these solo business operations and entrepreneurial sources. And if your school doesn't have a business center space, maybe there's a place within your office, your library or something, where you could create a space where students could gather and talk about entrepreneurship. That's something I find is they love to get together and talk to each other. And so, even if you just have a time that works for your students, again, depending on your campus, it might be at lunch or it might be at 7 in the evening or whatever works for your campus, this is a time when our library is open, and it's open just to people who want to talk about entrepreneurial startups, and see who shows up. That can be a really easy way to get the conversation going and making your office part of this. Another thing to think about is developing a workshop series. Once again, you don't have to be the expert. You can partner with other offices or departments and get guest speakers. In my class, I have 3 different guest speakers who come in throughout the semester, which gives me a night. I teach the course just once a week, and so it gives me kind of a night off there. I get to just listen. I bring in a lawyer for one evening to talk about legal aspects related to entrepreneurship. I bring in this wonderful woman who is who works for our local federal credit union, and she is in charge of business loans. So she's the one that reviews all the loan applications that come in. So she does a great program about who we look at and why we look at them, and what chances you have of getting a loan approved and so on. And that the students, it's kind of a hard lesson, because she talks about the fact that you need to be willing to put up some of your own money. You can't just expect the bank to hand you all the money. We want to know what money you have to put up to match or to support this business. So she gives a pretty clear message. And then I also have at least one entrepreneur come in to talk about the life of an entrepreneur. And I always find that person's very popular and gets lots and lots of questions. So you can invite in people, so it isn't all on you. Alumni are often more than willing to come in too. And then these are some topics for possible workshops, like a workshop on generating ideas, or assessing your personality type. Can you be an entrepreneur? How to develop entrepreneurial skills. Maybe walk them through what's available on your campus and where else they could go to learn to be an entrepreneur. What kinds of business planning do they need to do? Developing a sales or a marketing plan. Presenting an elevator pitch or a business idea. And as you can imagine, a lot of these things are helpful even if students end up saying, oh, never mind, and they go back into the regular job search, because they're going to develop this knowledge and these skills that they can talk to an employer about. They can say things like, well, At one point, I wanted to run my own business, so I investigated this, and I learned that one of my best skills is management. And that's why I realized that I'm going to be more productive working for a company in a management role. You know, they can present a story to an employer about this. And finding funding, you know, that's another great topic. So these are all possibilities, and again, you don't have to do it all yourself. You can find people who can do these kinds of talks. I find that generally entrepreneurs, if they have the time, they love to talk to students. They have a lot of energy. They tend to be storytellers. They're people, so it works really well. Okay, some other inexpensive resources that you can look into: Inc. Magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine. I think the last offer we got from Inc. Magazine was like $12 a year for a subscription. So your center could easily subscribe to that. And I guarantee if you get Inc. Magazine and you yourself just start reading it, your knowledge base is going to grow exponentially within a few issues. It's a great magazine, has lots of good resources, and is pretty cutting edge. Entrepreneur Magazine as well. These are the kind of magazines I don't always have time to read, but if I'm at an airport and I've got a flight ahead of me, I will often pick them up because they're always available at the airport magazine stands. And it's a great magazine to read on a flight, and you just learn so much. Also, I've just listed these colleges have been rated the top 10 by some ratings. Believe me, depending on who you look at, they have different ratings. But these are some schools that have very well-developed entrepreneurship programs. And because of that, they have great websites. And you can go into their websites and read all kinds of articles. And again, very low cost. You can link to these websites from your career center. So Babson College, University of Texas at Austin, Baylor, Rice, Indiana at Bloomington, University of Miami in Florida, University of Maryland, College Park, USC, I suspect you all know that school, University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Oklahoma. All schools that have some very nice entrepreneurship resources, and I would tap into them and look at what they have available. They have entire departments devoted to it with faculty who write articles and all sorts of things. So just connecting your students to some of those things. And then finally, these are some resources that I have used in the past and recommend. One Simple Idea that's a nice one. Again, it goes a lot into the personality of who should become an entrepreneur and how to go forward with an idea. And the book E-Myth is the one I mentioned earlier. That's the book by Michael Gerber, and it's the one that has those three types: the the entrepreneur, the technician, and the manager. Book Yourself Solid, that's one I recommend for all of you, quite frankly. If any of you are thinking of ever starting a private practice, or you know somebody who wants to start a private practice, I think that's one of the best books on the market for how to do that. It's not as good a book if you have a student who wants to start, let's say, an app, they want to create an app that they're going to sell to iTunes or whatever, to iPhone. It's not as good for that, and it's not as good for like a marshmallow company. But if you have somebody that's a professional, for instance, I had a student who was a midwife, and she wanted to start a midwifery business. And so Book Yourself Solid was actually a good book for her because she was primarily the technician, the practitioner for her particular role. And so that's a good book for that type of person. And then finally, this is another book I love. It's called The Right Brain Business Plan by Jennifer Lee. She's got a great website. She has lots of free handouts to download that you can take a look at. And that's a nice book because she has you do your planning in you know me, I'm all about visual maps, and so she does it in a very creative visual way in helping people develop their business plan. It won't work for all students. There's a lot of students who would look at that and kind of go, ooh. But for the right student, the creative types and the ones who just just are bored to tears the minute they hear about accounting or doing any kind of a cost analysis, Jennifer Lee's book will help them through that. For instance, she's got a show me the moolah plan, which is how she deals with money. She has you create a moolah map for how the money's going to go in and how the money's going to likely go out, and that's a lot of fun. So these are references that I recommend. There are so many books out there, and there's lots of good books. So this is just tip of the iceberg, but it shows you how easy it is to acquire information about this topic and add a whole new dimension to your career center if this is not something you've thought about before. So once again, I think I should stop, and I know, like I have here, that your time is very valuable. You're giving up your lunch hour, and I really appreciate you doing that. And now I guess I can open it if there are questions.
Well, thanks, Kate. As usual, you provide us with so many exciting pieces of information and great resources, books to look at. Really appreciate what you're doing here. I don't have any questions posted right now. I'm going to open the microphones for Rita and for Susan to see if they'd like to add anything to us. Rita and Susan?
This is Rita. I love, Kate, the way you formatted this so someone could really take those slides and be able to already have, a lot of a workshop prepared for them. It's great. I'd like to, in our last few minutes, unless there are some additional questions for Kate, and please take advantage, any of you that are on the webinar, of having Kate with us. And it's fun to be able to answer questions, live about whatever it is concerned. There are no silly questions as far as I'm concerned, so don't be shy about asking. But I want to make sure that you realize that all of these webinars have been archived, and I was going to have Kate Alder bring up the site about where you can go to see those. I actually want to show you where they are, in addition to some of the other resources that we have developed with our grant funds.
Okay, great. Let me just take back, Kate Brooks, I'm going to take the presentation back away from you so I can show my screen so that we can see what this looks like.
Very good.
Thanks. Thank you, Kate. That was great. I learned a lot. Those resources look really good. What you're looking at on your screen right now is cacareerbriefs.com, and there's lots of just great information here. In the middle are all the archived QTs on student success, professional experiences, and workplace skills. But for now, what we're going to do is go to the bottom right-hand corner where it says Career Development Statewide Advisory. That is where we happen to have located the webinars. And as you'll see in the middle of the screen over there on the right, the fun new tips and tools, The Introvert, is last week's webinar. The first one that we did this series is the social media. In fact, if you go down a couple, you'll see all the ones that Kate had done last year on visual techniques when you're teaching career planning and that sort of thing. So you'll find those webinars there. You can bring up and save them to your desktop and be able to just use certain slides or part of that, or just the information or whatever it is that you're developing. So I personally always really appreciate whatever start I can get, to when I'm offering workshops or classes or that sort of thing. So special kudos to Kate for bringing up good things.
Also go to free resources.
Okay, Susan. Okay, let's go back, if you will, Kate, to the home screen.
Yeah.
Right, that's good. Resources, that's good.
Right, it was taking a second to load. There you go.
Sure, you can get there from the home page too. It's in the middle bottom. Susan, I'll let you take this and mention a couple things you'd like to.
Well, can you see there's an entrepreneur map there under print resources, under community college. It's in the middle.
Second
on
row.
The second row. Yeah. That's an entrepreneur map, and it's really good to use in a workshop because it has some ideas for little activities. They can take a little quiz. There's some activities they can do. This was developed by the FCS grant at Mount SAC, and so just you might be able to get them free from Joanne, or feel free to print them out from this website. So it's another resource that they can use in their workshops.
Great, thanks.
And you'll see on the first and second row, these are all print resources that we've developed over the many years that we've been doing grant work. Many of them are projects from last year, the year before, but the resources are so good and still so relevant that we post them here in PDF. The part I like is you can go into any one of those booklets and be able to just print out a page if you want to use one for a class or a workshop that you're teaching. And there's everything from communication techniques to student success, as Susan mentioned, entrepreneurship piece. There's just lots of good resources in this section.
Open that one, Kate, the one with the light bulb. That's 5 inspiring activities for entrepreneurs, to think like an entrepreneur. So those are free activities that people can use in their workshops or have their students go through or link to their websites, whatever.
Great.
Also, in the state of California, we have funded entrepreneur centers at different community colleges. They are funded under the Economic and Workforce Development. And Rancho Santiago actually has 3. They have an incubator where entrepreneurs, if they're accepted for an idea, can go there and have the support, of course, of all the other people and the support of the center to get their ideas launched, so to speak. Then they have an entrepreneur center for students, and they also have one for women. And they give workshops, for students, for women, for, anybody. So there's lots of resources in our California community colleges around students who might be entrepreneurs. Or what they're really pushing at the state level is to integrate entrepreneurial skills across the curriculum. Because even if you're working for somebody else, you really need to be an entrepreneur and have some of these skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of the colleges I know are starting entrepreneurship programs too with some of the guidance from those centers around the state and other resources available. So I don't have any other questions posted. So do we have any last comments?
Let's just mention next week we have it'll be our last in this particular series that we're offering, and one that Kate is a tremendous expert in because she works with creative students all the time. And this one will be supporting their dreams and help them test reality. So that's going to be a really good one. You won't want to miss that. So we will see you back in 2 weeks from today. See you all then. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks to
Okay.
everybody.
Bye-bye.